Hello there, let's talk thesis statements. So I'd like to start with 3 key features of a thesis statement. First, it is 1 sentence long. Normally a thesis statement is only 1 sentence. Number 2, normally the thesis statement is found at the end of the introduction, so it should be the final sentence of your introduction paragraph. And number 3, the thesis statement is the most important sentence of your paper. That's why we spend time focusing on just this 1 sentence for an entire lesson, because it really does set the groundwork for the whole paper. It lets your reader know what your paper is going to focus on and what they are supposed to be getting out of it. So you can think of your thesis statement really as a kind of like GPS roadmap to your paper. So if you're driving somewhere you've never been to, you don't know how to get there, you're going to put that in your GPS. And if you don't sort of plan the route that way in advance, you're likely to get lost on your way there. It's the same issue with your paper. If you do not have a clear thesis statement that points out to your reader what you're trying to do, where you're going, your reader is going to be lost as they try to read through your paper. They're not really going to get anything out of it at the end. These 3 key features that I enumerated apply to thesis statements for any paper that you might be working on. But now let's talk more specifically about thesis statements for argumentative papers. These are papers in which you're trying to convince an audience of a particular claim or point of view. And for that type of thesis statement, there's a few more requirements that we need to take into account. Number 1, and I would say that this is the most critical point, your thesis statement must make an argument. It can't just state a fact that others would have to agree with because it's simply true. It has to actually stake some kind of a claim that others might reasonably disagree with. And then you're trying to prove that claim throughout your paper. So let's take a look at an example of an attempted thesis statement that doesn't really work because it's not really making an argument versus a version of it that is making an argument. The STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math fields have traditionally been dominated by men. Now, what is wrong with this sentence? As a sentence, it's fine, it's well written, it's an interesting topic, but it doesn't make an argument. It's simply stating a fact. To say that these fields have traditionally been dominated by men, we can do a quick search and look for the statistics. And if we find that statistically a much higher percentage of males than females have been studying in these fields and have careers in these fields, then this is simply a statement that is true. So there's nothing to argue here. I can write a sentence in which I make an argument based on this topic. So let's look at an example of that. High schools and universities should actively encourage female students to consider pursuing careers in the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math fields. Okay, so I'm still talking about the same topic. It's still specifically about that disparity between men and women in these fields. But now I am making an argument. I'm saying that we should do something about that disparity, right? Something to kind of level the playing field. And I'm being a little bit more specific about it as well because I'm saying what I think we should do in order to level the playing field, which is that perhaps high schools and universities can actively encourage female students to then pursue degrees in those fields when they get to college. Number 2 thing that your thesis has got to do, it has to choose a side. Now this is very related to the first one about making an argument because if you're not choosing a side, in a way you're not making an argument. But what a lot of students end up doing in a thesis statement is that they will kind of show both sides of the debatable topic since you're probably working with a debatable topic. And when the reader reads that within the thesis statement, they see, okay, some people believe this, some people believe that, but they don't know what you believe. They don't know what your actual opinion or argument is that you are going to develop. So you want to make sure that you make it clear what side you are on in that debate. Once again, let's look at a bad example and then a better one. Bad example. Many American citizens feel that the U.S. has a responsibility to welcome refugees, but others fear an open-door policy. Now, when I read the sentence, I could see the debate, right? I could see that there's an argument brewing here, but the author doesn't actually tell me what his or her own opinion is, so I don't know which side the author agrees with. Either that the U.S. has a responsibility to welcome refugees, or that an open door policy is a bad idea. So the way to solve that is just to outright choose one of those two sides. So here's a better example. As a world power, the US has a responsibility to welcome refugees so long as they have undergone a rigorous vetting process. All right, so now the author is clearly staking the claim. The US has a responsibility to welcome refugees. Not some people think. This is what I believe. The argument is there. It has chosen a side. And notice, however, that when you do choose a side, when you do make an argument, that argument doesn't necessarily always have to be like a fully black and white kind of argument. It doesn't have to be that the US must allow in all refugees versus nope, nobody gets in. Everyone is dangerous. It doesn't have to be that black or white. Most reality is kind of in a gray area, and it's okay if your argument is in a gray area, which is the case in this sentence. The US has a responsibility to welcome refugees so long as they have undergone a rigorous vetting process. So it has a little bit of a caveat there. So just keep that in mind as well when you're deciding how to make your argument a little bit more refined. Number 3 is be specific. So a lot of people will manage to make the thesis statement an argument, but then they won't make that argument specific enough to sound very interesting or very academic. So once again, bad example, good example. Something must be done about the obesity epidemic in the US. Now, is this an argument? Yes, because you are saying that something must be done about this problem. And somebody reading it could reasonably disagree with it. So they would have to agree that the obesity epidemic is real because the statistics show that, but they might not agree that we need to really do anything about it. So it is an argument. However, it is really broad, very general, and therefore feels less academic. So let's make that more specific. So many ways to do that. Here's just one. In order to combat childhood obesity, U.S. public elementary schools should institute comprehensive programs that incorporate healthier meals for students, increase physical education requirements, and provide nutrition education in the classroom. So I have now narrowed down my argument significantly. I am still making the argument that we need to do something about this, but now I'm not talking about the obesity epidemic at large, but specifically just childhood obesity. I'm saying who I think should be doing something about this, specifically public elementary schools, not even all public schools, just elementary schools. And I'm saying specifically what I think they should do in order to combat the obesity epidemic. I think that they should incorporate healthier meals, that they should increase physical education, and that they should provide nutrition education in schools. So this gives a very clear roadmap. Remember that GPS to my reader. They know exactly where I'm going to be going with this. There shouldn't be any major surprises when it comes to an academic paper. Your reader should know from the beginning where you're heading, and then it's just a matter of them seeing all of the details and how you develop that thought. So this is one way to make it more specific by adding the actual points that you're going to be developing in the upcoming paragraphs. One final note. I've been stressing make an argument, make an argument, make an argument. However, that does not mean that at any point you need to say, I think, I feel, I believe, in my opinion. These are phrases that we do not use in academic writing. We generally avoid using I at any point, referring to oneself. You don't need to say that this is your opinion. By simply stating the opinion, your name is on the paper. If it's not just a fact, if it's something that's debatable, your reader already understands, okay, that is his or her opinion. Therefore, make sure that you avoid that kind of phrasing in not just a thesis statement, but the entire paper. Okay, so to sum up, we had 3 key features and we had 3 things that your thesis must do. Just use those as a checklist to make sure that your thesis really is hitting the mark as that roadmap or GPS of your paper.